What is up, everybody? Joe Sib here with you and my co-host,
Anea Bogue.
Someday I want to have a drum roll.
That would be exciting.
Like just Dave Grohl in here. And then, no. What do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah? Would you dig that?
Maybe, but I'm willing to try anything once.
You're looking at me right now like, okay,
what are you saying?
Where are we going with this? Oh, man. Got to thank everyone, as I say at the top of the show, and I know a lot of times if you listen to all these shows in a row, you'd be like, wow, they really talk about the same thing at the beginning of the show. But I always like to refer to like just taking care of business at the top of the show.
Yep.
Thank you so much
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping, exactly. Thank you so much for all the emails. Last week's episode was from someone that emailed in. We talked about dating.
Yep.
We talked about dating. We talked about 4 topics: divorce, dating, someone remarrying, and then a new child on the way.
Yep.
And all of those.
We covered a lot of territory.
Wow. Man, I love it. I want to ask you a question. You have been, we're actually getting ready to go to Guatemala, and you're going down there for your whole program. This is the second year down there.
Yes.
And
it's very exciting.
before we dove into it, today, because it's exciting. You're literally, I'm looking at you and you have that look in your eye of like, oh my God, am I really flying out tonight?
I know. Am I really going to be able to get on this plane?
Yeah.
Let
our listeners know the program.
Okay, so real quick. So most of you probably know about Real Girl, which is the empowerment program that I created several years ago. Go ahead, Joe, with your hand up.
And just so you guys know, that's how I met Anea, because my daughter.
Yes.
Basically, you deal with self-esteem. You do the whole thing.
Yep.
And not only do you do it with girls, you do it with boys now.
So this is new, right?
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, we started to have requests because we originally just started working exclusively with girls, and we've been having more and more requests for us to have a parallel program for boys. That is one of the things that has happened in Guatemala. So originally we launched just a girls program in Guatemala, Guatemala, for those of you who don't know, one of the most dangerous countries in the world for girls and women to live. And so the need was great. We've gone in there, we've brought down pregnancy rates, dropout rates among girls. The impact has been so tremendous that schools have been asking for a parallel boys program, which we just launched last month. And so I'm going to Guatemala to see how our program is going, to meet some of the new people that we've hired on our team. We pay local men and women to instruct the girls and the boys that go through our program. So I'm really excited, but I am taking off to a third world country.
Well, I know. I had to ask you when you just said that's one of the most dangerous places in the world
for girls and women. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you? Are you nervous at all?
A little bit. I'm going to have a few members of my team with me, and the reality is in spite of everything that these people have been through, civil war in the 90s, they are such a lovely, gentle people. Like most of the people that I interact with are just so warm and loving. So yeah, most of the time, it's safety first, and I'm conscious of it, but it's not like, I'm worried that when I hit the ground, I'm going to have like a team of security or something.
Yeah. And how many days are you there?
Like 9 days.
9 days.
Yeah.
And when you hit the ground, is it just the ground
Pretty
running?
much.
Wow.
Yeah. Meetings with schools, going in and seeing the workshops, watching the girls and the boys. And it's really, I always, like last time I left there, I was like, just so, this is sort of my heart and soul. And it's really lovely when you see that it's changing people's lives.
Well, I got to say this, that I wanted everyone to hear you say that, because a lot of times you and I talk about stuff off the air. And I felt that it was important for everyone to know that, you may come in here and talk about the questions that they have and give advice and you have your opinions, but you're also living it. You're not just, cruising around here in LA, making house calls in beautiful places. You're going to Guatemala and living it. So, I thank you for that, because that's gnarly.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. So think of that. When you're down there, you're just going to be like, this is pretty gnarly.
This is pretty gnarly. Am I really doing this?
Yeah. All right. So, I wanted to go into a topic, and I thought this is the way I'm going to kind of set it up for you. This would be a show for our parents that are it might be toddlers all the way up to like 8-year-old. And I'm going to use you an example.
Okay.
I tell you an example. When my son was about 5 years old, okay, we were in the grocery store, and there was this old man, and his skin was just wrinkled. He looked like Iggy Pop, just where the skin is just dripping off of their body like wax. And he was this little old man, and I didn't think anything about it because he's this old man in the vegetable section, And my son just looked right at him and said, Dad, look at this guy's skin. It looks like it's melting off his body. Oh my gosh, he's so old.
Yes.
And he said this at full volume, okay? Full volume where everyone in the store looks at me and there's that moment of like, okay, Dad, how are you going to answer that one? And right away, my first instinct was to be like, don't talk like that, just shut him down. But I got down and said to my son, I said, yeah, and someday Dad's going to be old and his skin isn't melting. It's just seen a lot of wonderful years and a lot of great summers and a few beers.
And a few beers.
I just thought he was grasping, maybe a couple cigarettes. But, my point being is I just said, hey, that's, I didn't know at the time because you and I obviously weren't working together, but unbeknownst to myself, I was using that moment as a teachable moment.
Yeah.
All right. Now, going to the next part of today, I was going through our emails again. I was answering a few of them. First of all, thanks for everyone. You can keep emailing us. I think I just said that, radparenting@gmail.com. But one of the dads out there hit us an email, and I forgot what city he lived in, but basically what he was saying was he picks his daughter up after school from the daycare, and when they're driving back to their home, they go through an area where they see a lot of homeless people. And he can tell, looking in the rearview mirror that she's looking out there, and he was asking you and I, when and how does he start to talk to his daughter about homeless people and the fight and the survival that they are going through, which can lead to a lot of different conversations. He didn't know when and how to kind of open that up, which also made me kind of bring to the table to ask you to maybe helping our listeners, just explaining to our children just people of different color, people different race, people of different color, people of different gender, people of different sizes. Like, wow, that man is huge, Dad. Wow, that lady's super skinny. And we all face it, but it's something that and the example that I gave you at the beginning was the time that you're going to have to come up with dealing with it, you're not prepared. Like when I was in, the store and my son said, "Why is the man's skin melting?" I had never thought about that particular situation and how I would address it. So I felt I would share this experience with our parents out there so that maybe you could kind of give us an insight of how and when do you start having those conversations about just how different everybody is in the world.
Right. So the earlier, I think it's a great question. And I think that a lot of us face it. I want to commend you for sort of on the spot getting down and just being really honest with Nate. And the reason I think that it needs to happen, sooner than later is because it really is another foundational piece for our kids in terms of making sense of the world that they're moving through. And I think that with Nate's comment, it really speaks to the reality of being like having, being new on the planet and looking around and everything is like, wow, what is that? He wasn't looking at that man with any judgment of like, that's a bad thing or that's unattractive or anything. He was like, oh, there's something about that man's face that I haven't seen anywhere else. And what is going on there? Like, it's really such a beautiful thing. And I think that we need to check ourselves because the inclination, I could see it, everybody couldn't see you, but just the look on your face when you're like, our first inclination is like, oh my God, what is somebody else going to think about what my kid is saying? Or who's this going to offend or whatever?
Well, the term you always use, we're on stage.
Yes.
And I can't tell you more. And that at that moment at Trader Joe's, I felt like, wow, is there a microphone going to suddenly appear in my hand? Because everyone was looking at me like, okay, Dad, how are we going to handle this one?
Yes.
And just for our listeners right now, this wasn't something that happened recently, because if you listen to the show, you know that Nate is way older.
Yes.
So this was when he was about 5.
Yeah. So, sorry. So, so I think that what's really important is to understand, and hopefully I'm going to assume that most of our listeners are conscious, kind people who want to raise children who are kind and conscious people. And so, this is something when my oldest was growing up, we lived in the Bay Area, and so we would drive through San Francisco a lot, and so she would see like areas where there were just like all these little, makeshift homes,
South
and
of Market,
exactly, and she would be like, "Mommy, what is that, and what are those people doing?" And it was such a beautiful opportunity to say, those are people who, unlike, we are so fortunate to have a home with warm beds and lots of food, and that is their home. That is all they have. And we never know what a person's journey has been. We don't know what led them there. And what I really steer away from, and I can remember my parents doing it, like coming from this really cynical place of like, oh, well, if we give them money, they're just going to go and like use it on drugs, or, that's just making it easy for them to stay homeless and never have to work. And I just don't come from that place, first of all. Secondly, I think it's really important, and it's an opportunity to not just teach something about, like in the case of my oldest daughter, it was like helping her to understand her good fortune and how not everybody has the same good fortune in the world, and we need to have compassion for those who don't and appreciation for the fact that we do. But it also created opportunity for me to say to her, no matter what they do, like she would, we'd go into the city and she would start saying, "Can I take $1 out of my penny bank?" And I would say, that's a really beautiful thing. Well, how do I know how they're going to use it? Well, you don't. But you know what? That doesn't matter, because we don't have control over what other people do. We only have control over what we do and the kind of human being that we choose to be in the world. So even now, as my youngest daughter will see me, getting on or off a freeway, and that's here in LA, that's frequently where we'll have people that are homeless that are asking for money. As much of the time as I can, especially if she is in the car with me, I will make a point of giving $1 or giving a 5 or something, and reiterating the fact that I'm doing that because that's the person that I want to be. And if I have more than somebody else, I have more coconuts than somebody else, then I personally think the right thing to do is to share those coconuts.
Question. If your son or daughter is not asking the question about the homeless person, do you bring it up to them and say, "Hey, we just passed by that guy
especially if you want to give your children perspective, which I think is important, and that is that not all of us have the great benefit of having 4 walls with a roof, and I think it's important for our kids to, and especially in this part of the world, we have great abundance, and I think that if we are trying to raise conscious human beings, I would say conscious democratic citizens who feel a sense of connection and responsibility for themselves and each other, then these are opportunities to bring that to the surface and teach those things in a way that it's going to be far more memorable than like conversation over dinner or something.
Yeah, because the first thing that I feel for some of us is just, and I don't want to speak for everyone, I'm speaking for myself, is the first thing is to kind of push it down, like, oh, don't say that. And I don't, and no, you are right that I think sometimes when there's these difficult conversations, whether it's about a homeless person or the way that someone looks, and that's kind of where I want to steer it. Do you ever feel that you do not have enough time in the day to do what you're supposed to get done? You're going to work, you're maybe trying to hit the gym, but you forgot that, oh, I got to pick so-and-so up from daycare. Oh, I got to get my dad over to his doctor's appointment. Oh, I wanted to pick up the house before I left. Wow, check it out. How am I going to get everything done? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Go to care.com. Care.com. Care.com is the world's largest digital marketplace for finding and managing family care. That is right. Family care needs can be unpredictable. You got sick kids. You need someone to stay home. Man, both parents are out there trying to make a living. Your kids get sick. Oh, who's going to stay home? Who's going to miss out on that cash? Now you go to care.com and they'll have someone for you that can look after your kids. Don't stress your life away. Seriously, most working parents worry about their kids every minute of the day. You're more at ease and more focused when you know your kids or your parents or even your pets are well cared for. Best part is this, care.com provides access to a variety of background check options you can purchase to help make sure that you're making the best hiring decision. That's my favorite part right there. They're letting you know there's a million different things for you to check out on the background check options so you know who's going to be there with your kids or with your parents or with your pet taking care of the situation. Care.com. Check it out now. If you go to care.com right now, you ready for this? To save 30% off care.com premium membership, visit care.com/rad parenting when you subscribe, and you're going to get 30% off. Like I said,
The world's moving a million miles an hour. You just want to take care of your kids and all the responsibilities. Letcare.com help.
Get into that, yes.
So let's steer it into,
Somebody's appearance.
People's appearance.
Yeah.
I remember as, growing up with a lot of Italian older women. Sometimes, I remember the first time I saw like a mustache on like one of my aunts. It was like, whoa, like that was, are you,
Oh my God.
do you know what I'm saying? It was like, and I remember just staring at it and
Yeah,
and just
like,
being
wow, what is that?
That's a mustache right there. And not saying anything because I was probably older, but that was something different. And then I remember just as a kid, my mom or dad, they would kind of make a joke about it and just say, well, that's your Aunt Mary, and you're like, okay, cool. Or seeing someone with a mole or something like that. And,
sure.
As a little kid, you kind of just sit there and stare. And I'm wondering, are those opportunities that are those teachable moments?
Yes, and look, we are raising children at what I would say is, a challenging but really incredible time as well, where we are, we're revisiting, or we are maybe visiting for the first time, this whole idea of like looking at gender in a way that is much more broad and multifaceted than we previously have. Or
even people's sexuality.
For sure.
I remember I had one gay uncle.
Yep.
And it was, but my mom and dad, they let us, because it was the 70s, and it was just like, it was like, yeah, that's, he's gay. And I was like, oh, okay, what's that? He likes people of the same sex.
Yep.
It was like, okay. And I remember it just was like, okay, there wasn't anything put on it, but I don't know if those type of conversations were happening with other families. Does that make sense?
Who knows? But your parents did it right. And what I heard in your, like, just as you were telling me about it right now, is they were doing the thing I always say is so important. And that is the way that we frame something, the tone that we use, the kind of brain prompt we give our children when we talk to them about a particular topic is really such a fundamental piece for how they will receive it and hold it for themselves. So your parents were very like, oh, well, here's what it is.
There's matter of fact.
Don't talk about that. Not like, well, we would never want you to do that, but here's the deal for your Uncle Sam or whatever. Yeah. So, so I'm, we here at Rad Parenting are coming from a place of, we want to embrace diversity. The reality is we live in this beautiful, place where there are people from so many different walks of life, whether it's, socioeconomic differences, ethnic differences, whatever. And that is a fact of our world that is only going to be, we're only going to blend more with, again, increased everything from the internet and our ability to communicate and find each other in that way to actual physical transportation, making it possible for people to live and move all over the world and be blending different cultures. And so the best way that we can serve our children, I think, is to help them embrace that and see that, just like, a quilt that has many colors or, whatever, that having people that have different ways of being in the world and different appearance and all these things are what makes the world interesting and wonderful. And by framing it in that way and welcoming their questions, not like, oh my gosh, don't talk about that. Or and certainly if you are hearing judgment attached to it, exploring where that's coming from. So I'm, for example, really sensitive when my younger one, a couple of times I heard her reference like body types, like, oh, she's really fat or he's really fat, in a way that sounded negative. And I paused to say, I hear the tone in your voice is such that it sounds like you think that that's a bad thing. And like, while it may be a legitimate concern to say, that person, I don't know how healthy he or she is, because it looks like they're putting a lot of extra, work on their heart because they're carrying a lot of extra weight. That's a different thing. And again, coming from a place of compassion as opposed to passing judgment because he or she is not meeting some standard for appearance, which is a whole different conversation. And so remember that when our kids talk to us or they make comments about things they see out in the world, it's also giving us an opportunity to what's going on in their inner world and how we can help guide them through it.
Yeah. And it's crazy that all of this can start with a child at such a young
Itty bitty.
age.
The earlier, the better.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to say that, I mean, if this is a priority for you, and I hope that it is, this idea of like helping your kids embrace like the diversity in people's differences, you know, as much as we sometimes feel inclined that we're just going to park ourselves in some safe little neighborhood where there's no diversity because we've got it in our heads that that's going to be, you know, the best thing for our kids, I think anytime that you can create opportunities for your children to see the beautiful diversity of the world, the less strange it's going to be. If your child doesn't see the face of an African American person till they're 10, they're going to be like, what's going on there? Why does that? It's going to seem foreign, and sometimes things that are foreign to us feel scary to us. Whereas if we have made a point from the time our kids are little to put them in preschools that have diverse families, or just creating other opportunities, that's really, really important to their development and their ability to feel comfortable and move freely and safely through the world in a way that embraces
and amongst people that are different than them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it also
it
sets the tone for them.
It goes for everybody.
And both
Yeah.
ways, right?
Yeah.
So them also feeling like they don't need to follow, you know, a narrow script of acceptability for appearance or behavior. If they've also been taught to embrace differences in other people, they're gonna find their own unique bits that they're going to be more willing to share with the world.
You know, I know that what I love about doing this show is you have an older daughter and you have a younger daughter, and I've met your younger daughter so many different times. I love her. I've always wanted to tell people the story one time she was here at the house and we were talking about driving a car. And for everyone out there, she's 8.
Yeah.
And I said, and I don't know how I asked her. I said, "Hey, if you could drive, like, where would you go?" And she's all, Barnes and Noble. And I'm all, the bookstore? She's all, yeah. And I was like,
She loves the book.
yeah, like my son was like, GameStop, he had his thing where he was going to go. And then she was like, Barnes and Noble. I would probably drive there. I'm like, that's the first place you're going to drive? She's like, yeah. I was like, wow, this kid's great. But knowing her, and she's such a little, just asking questions all the time. Did she ever have a Nate moment that you can remember? I'm kind of getting you to put you on the spot here. Did either one of your kids ever have a moment in the store where they said something, funny or just crazy?
And I don't know that
question?
I don't know that I can think of one off the top of my head right now, but certainly like both of them have always, I've tried to make, create space for them to always feel like they can just let it rip, like speak freely, ask questions. And like I said, my big thing is not calling them out or being like punitive when I hear them say something that sounds judgmental, but calmly asking with genuine curiosity to get to the bottom of wherever that perception is coming from.
And that is so important that you brought that up at the end of this episode of not, I want to say, making them feel guilty when they say, why is that man so fat and gross?
Right.
And you're like, okay, I have to realize this person's little mind just said that and they don't know what they said. Because I know my first inclination would be, hey, chill on the comments, bro.
Right.
Fat and gross? I don't think so.
Right.
This is a human being. And then they're like, gosh, I'm never going to say that again.
Well, and yes,
And
so you
giving
shut
them
down
that-
an opportunity for conversation.
There you
and
go.
also, and I think that we are often inclined, or we're kind of set off in that way as parents, to have a negative reaction. If, like in your case, you're in a store, everybody's looking at you, and we go back into that place of our children being extensions of our own ego, and we're like, oh my gosh, how does this look for me? Instead of just, you know what, put up the cone of silence, deal with your child, make it a teachable moment. Those people are going to go on with their lives. They're also focused on their own thing, that they're not going to give you another thought, but don't waste the opportunity to teach your child something that will stay with them through their lives.
I love it. Teachable moment, always. So many key words. We've used the word framing, teachable moment.
I know.
I love it. I love
So
it.
pro.
Yes, so pro. Well, you need to get ready to go to Guatemala.
I do.
And we need to get out of here. Once again, thank you guys all for the emails. Please keep the text coming in. That would be parenting to 31 31 31. I said it on the last episode, and I'm going to say it again. Don't hesitate to go over to iTunes and check out my comedy record. You can get it for $8, and you would make this squishy-faced Italian man super, super happy.
So what do? They go to iTunes, they search Joe Sib.
Yep. SIB.
SIB. And what is it? Nowhere Near the Top?
Yeah, nowhere near the top. You can get my record for $8 and check it out. If we move enough of these, I might have the #1 comedy record in America.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and if that happens, I will do something super. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about it, and we'll put it on the next episode.
Awesome.
Like maybe I'll take a photo of me doing something like I don't want to say I'm going to do that because that'd be inappropriate.
But
anyway.
Let's think about that. I think it might be but I think it might be fun.
It'd be fun. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. My name is Joe Sib.
And Anaya Bogue.
And we're out of here
late.